Welcome back to the CAMI Recipes series inspired by Grandma's Kitchen. My name is Charles Taker, and today we're going to be making homemade bread. And this is a recipe from my mother, Mary Taker. So to begin with, we're going to get our yeast going. So we have a cup of warm water, not hot, but warm water, because if you use hot water, your yeast won't bloom. So we're going to add the yeast into this water, and we're going to mix it up and let it sit for about 10 minutes until it blooms. In the meantime, we're going to add our remaining ingredients to the bowl. We're going to start with 6 cups of flour. So I have 5 already in the bowl, and I'm going to add another one right now. We're going to add a pinch of salt. And we're going to add 1/4 cup of shortening. And we're just going to mix that through. So we'll just mix that through the flour mixture as we're waiting for the yeast. So we've worked the shortening into the dry ingredients. We're just waiting for the yeast to rise a little more. It's blooming perfectly. As you see, it's almost doubled in size. So we'll give it another 3 to 4 minutes and it should be ready to mix with the dry ingredients. And so now our yeast is wonderfully bloomed. It's doubled, almost tripled in size. So it's going to get messy now. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves, and so I'll be able to get my hands right into the bowl. So now we're going to mix up our ingredients. So I'm just going to create a little well in the middle here, and then I'm going to start with my yeast. Beautiful. And then I'm going to add possibly up to 4 cups of water, but might be less. So I'm going to add it a little bit at a time. So I'm going to start with 2 cups. It's never the same. And the good thing with bread is it's very forgiving. So if you've added too much water, well, you'll just counterbalance that by adding more flour. And if you've added too much flour, well, you'll just get a little more water from the tap. But you want your dough to be soft. And so when it comes out, you want it to be tacky. Not terribly sticky, but tacky nonetheless. So now it's time. I'm going to start mixing it with my hands. It's beautifully coming together. You don't want your bread to be too dry. So if you're feeling your bread is dry, add a bit more water. Actually, we didn't use all the water I thought we were going to use. But I think we might want a tad bit more, just a drop maybe. And so, because we don't want it to be too wet, but we don't want it to be dry, because if it's dry now, it's going to be very dry later as we're mixing it together. And so this is the key point. Now look, I've gotten my apron a little dirty, but we're going to take it out now to the, and you can watch me knead it. And this is the part of the bread which is probably the most important part, because we're working the gluten. And so we're getting the gluten working. And so that's what's going to make it rise. A little more flour. And it takes a bit of strength. So as you get older, this is the part of the bread that becomes the hardest part to do. My mother makes very good bread, so I kind of am intimidated to be making her bread. As you see, this is nice and soft. It's not dry. Now this batch of bread, because we've halved it, probably will give you about 3 loaves. We've kneaded this probably for about 5 minutes now, so I think it's ready to go back into the bowl. So what I'm going to take is the same bowl that I mixed it all in, and I'm just going to grease the inside of the bowl. and this is just so that when it's rising, because this is going to rise to the very top. And so you're going to have to punch it down regularly. So for the first hour, you'll punch it down probably about every 15 minutes or so. It'll be risen. So you just punch it down so it loses the air, and it'll rise back up. And then after the first hour, you're just going to leave it and for about 2 hours, and then you're going to put it in the pans. And of course, you let it rise in the pans, and voila. So now your bread is ready just to sit and rest for a little while. So find a warm corner in your house. That's very important for your bread to rise in the pans. It needs to be in a warm environment. Maybe you want to put it in the window with some sun, or in the oven with the oven light on, but find a warm environment for it to rise, because if your house is too cool, it will not rise. And so this bread has been rising for nearly 3 hours now. We punched it down about 3 times. And so we're just going to cut it and put it into the greased bread pan. So first of all, I'm going to just grease my hands. Maybe I've just put a little too much on, but we're going to cut the bread so I can handle it. And we're going to just basically cut it in 3, because this recipe should make 3 loaves of bread. So I'm just going to cut it here in 3. And then I'm just going to work it with my hands. And it's important to work it with your hands. And if you don't have the grease on your hands, it'll be very hard to do that. And we're going to form it. Again, pulling the gluten out and forming it into a little ball to put it in the pan. And this is going to rise one more time. It's going to rise in the actual loaf pan, and then it should rise to about 1 inch or so above. And once it's risen to that height, then that's about a half hour or so. And then you're going to put it into a 400-degree oven for 30 to 40 minutes. And so now this is what it looks like in the pan. And so this is going to fill the pan, and it's going to rise about 1 inch or so above. And at that moment, we're going to put it in. So right now, just put the cloth back on it and let it work its magic. And so the bread has been resting now for about 45 minutes, and you see it's risen quite a bit above the rim of the pan, so it's ready to go into the oven. It's a 400-degree oven, and it's going to be for 30 to 40 minutes. Our bread has been cooking probably about 40 minutes now, so it's ready to come out of the oven. It's nice and brown, so it looks like it's perfectly done. Bread is excellent to just have a slice of bread and butter, bread and jam. Bread can also be frozen if you have extra bread and you don't want it to go stale. You put it in the freezer. It doesn't take long to thaw, and it probably stay good in your freezer for about 3 months. And you can watch the other videos in the CAMI cooking series or visit the website for more information about local events. Thank you for joining us. See you again soon.